We have Bibles in the back, and you can just go back there and grab one. You're not, no need to be embarrassed if you get up and just you forgot yours, because you'll need it today, all right? So if you have one on your phone, great. But if you don't, make sure you got one, okay? And so grab a Bible, and you're like, does he really mean that? Absolutely. Absolutely. Every week we use our Bibles, and sometimes I forget mine. I've got mine there, and I've got printed stuff here that they're from the Bible. But you never know. I might be wrong, right? So check it out, right? There's actually a church in the Bible called Berea, the Bereans. They would actually check the pastor out, like, I don't know, make sure he's doing the right thing. So you never know. I could be quoting Abraham Lincoln for all you know, right? So check it out. By the way, Abe's a good guy, but we don't want to hear from Abe today. We want to hear from God, right? So check it out. Look at the Bible. You know, how many of you, just a quick survey, how many of you feel like you might have overeaten over the last few days? Anybody? Or a few of you, like, Linda, you didn't put the hand up very high. There you go. There you go. You confess there. How many of you did some shopping on Friday? Anybody? Go ahead. No Black Fridays? Okay, we got a few Black Fridays. How many of you got all your Christmas shopping done? Raise your hand. You're done with your Christmas shopping. Anybody? Yes. Yes, done. Awesome. Christmas shopping done. How many of you are envious of her right there, right? We're all like, how many of you don't like her all of a sudden right there, right? You're like, I liked Claudia, but now I don't know. How many of you on Black Friday, you bought something for yourself? You bought something for yourself. You ever do that? I'm kind of a buy myself. Like, I'm doing it for other people, and then I'm like, well, I could use that. That's cool, you know. That's like a toolbox. I'm the only person that buys toolboxes and really don't know how to use them at all. But you just buy them, right? People just buy things. Sometimes they don't. But it's on sale, right? It's $3,000 and it's on sale for $2,500. Let's say $500. Boom, buy it, right? Amazon will have it to you tomorrow. As we enter into Advent season, there's all kinds of things that are going to be thrown at us over the next few weeks. Buy this, you have to buy now. You're not going to be able to buy later. Monday's going to roll around. They told you on Friday it's not going to be there. Monday it'll be there. There'll be Cyber Monday, and then you'll be able to continue to buy things right up until some of you, Christmas Eve. You'll do your Christmas shopping Christmas Eve. By the way, ahead of time, Christmas Eve is Saturday this year. Saturday. So mark this down. Saturday at 10:30 a.m. This is what we're doing. We are doing everything we do on Sunday on Saturday. Sunday's the 25th. Some of you might want to come to church. We're not having church here. We will be online Christmas morning for you to watch. But Christmas Eve, the 24th, we're doing everything here at 10:30. Just like we do on Sunday at 10:30. Does that sound good? So on the 24th, 10:30, some of you are like, that is awesome. Now I can really Christmas shop on Christmas Eve. Don't do that, okay? We're doing that so you can spend some time with people in your neighborhood, invite people over that may need somebody to be there for them on Christmas Eve, spend Christmas Eve with them, invite them into your home on Christmas morning and watch services online. It's a great opportunity for us. Some of you may be saying, why aren't you having Christmas? When you set up and tear down, that takes about 5 hours, and we just thought that would be good to give some of our setup and tear down folks, which is me and many others that are here, a break for Christmas morning. It also gives the school a break because they have to be here when we're here. So Christmas morning, that's one reason why we're doing it. We're not trying to be unspiritual. But I encourage you to do this. Some of you know how to do this now. We spent a few months doing it. Wear your jammies on Christmas morning. Watch us online. All right? On Christmas morning, invite people in. But Christmas Eve, the 24th, and I'm going to reiterate that every week for the next few weeks because some of you are going to show up on Christmas morning and say, what's going on? Right? So Christmas Eve, show up then. I want you to turn to Isaiah 9, if you would. Isaiah 9. And I'm going to read a passage in Isaiah 7 before that because these two passages really go together. And for the next few weeks, we're going to stay in Isaiah 9:6 for the next few weeks. Such a powerful passage. Wasn't that a powerful song we just sang? Names of God. That's where we're going to stay for the next few weeks. It says here in Isaiah 7:14, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Emmanuel means God with us. Now turn to Isaiah 9:2. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwell in the land of deep darkness, on them has light shone. You have multiplied the nation. You have increased its joy. They rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest, as they are glad when they divided the spoil. For the yoke of the burden and the staff for his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor, you have broken as on the day of Midian. For every boot of the tramping warrior in battle, turmoil, and every garment rolled in blood will be burned as fuel for the fire. You don't see that on many Christmas cards, by the way. And then we come to 6. For unto us a child is born. To us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders. And his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and the peace there will be no end, on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. First thing I want you to realize in this passage is this is a prophecy that was 730 years before Jesus was born. It was given at first to King Ahaz, and he was and it was something that was trying to reassure Ahaz of something, because Ahaz was in the midst of seeing Israel being overthrown, and so he's saying, don't worry, Ahaz, God's going to give you a sign to prove he will protect you and you can trust him. Now you think Ahaz would take that as good news, that God is going to come and protect you, going to protect our nation, but Ahaz is not interested in that, because he's thinking, if God does what he says and comes and protects me, then I'm going to have to obey God. If God comes through, then now I have no other option but to obey him. Isn't that interesting? And so Isaiah says, let me just tell you, it is going to be this way. That's what prophets do, right? They just tell it like it is. And so he gives this, and Ahaz isn't interested in that. And then Isaiah says, well, I'm going to give it to you anyway. I'm going to give you the sign. And this is what it's going to be. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. 700 years before he comes. Now, to Ahaz, this doesn't necessarily fix the immediate problem. He still has this Assyrian army that's coming, and it doesn't necessarily fix the present situation he's in. And you're saying, what does that have to do with me? If you sense that today, like, what does Jesus coming and his birth mean to me? You are like most people in the world. Most people are thinking, what does this mean to me? I mean, I like the manger scenes. I like Santa Claus, to kind of mix that together, right? I love watching Polar Express. I love all the things that come with Christmas, all the traditions that come. What does that have to do with me? Ahaz probably felt a little like that. He's like, here comes the army. You're telling me that there's going to be a baby that's going to be born that's going to help me in 730 years. We look back and say, what in the world is that going to help me with now? I'm having marital problems now. I'm dealing with financial issues now. I'm having problems at work now. What does that have to do with me? So we can put ourselves in this place. The context of this is he's going to fix our problem. Maybe not necessarily surface problems, but our problem. You see, the root problem is this: we're separated from God. The root problem is that they were separated from God. That's the root problem. So first, in sending Jesus, God is doing this. He's dealing with the problem at its very root. You may look into the service and say, what in the world does this all have to do? When Jesus comes, it's not just to give us warm, feely, cozy feelings and we sing songs and all that, even though I love doing that. It has to do with fixing a root problem that you and I have, and history has, humanity has, and that is separation from God. God himself said, it is not right for me to be separated from those that I love. Therefore, I am going to send my only son to earth. And this is how he does it. You can't make this up. God himself says, I will now be born, and I'm going down, and I'm going to be born in a manger. Only God can do that. If you're a man trying to make this up, that's not what you make up. You come in and you say, God's going to be in charge. He's going to take over. He's going to wipe everybody out that's against him. And no. He comes down and he doesn't wipe everybody out that's against him. He actually takes all of our sins on himself. I know I'm getting ahead, but you need to know the rest of the story. This is really something that happened in the future, but for us, it's already taken place. You see, Advent's already happened. The coming of Jesus has already happened. He is here, and we can now walk in that promise. So, sending Jesus really is dealing with the problem at its root. And I'll tell you, evil is a problem. Evil's a problem in the world. And it doesn't always look evil, but it is evil. The things that happen sometimes start out good, and then all of a sudden it turns and it shifts. J.R. Tolkien, we were talking about him. Our family's a big J.R. Tolkien fans, and kind of a thing that we do is we watch Lord of the Rings 100 times. That's just what we do. We like the Lord of the Rings. We like Tolkien. We're fans of J.R. Tolkien. And this is what he says. Evil is a shapeshifter. It's like a shadow. After you defeat it, it takes another shape, and it grows again. So, if you look at it, evil as a shapeshifter, you must get to the root issue, because evil will always shift and move and change dynamics in your life. If you struggle with addiction, it can shape and shift into other addictions. If you deal with cheating, it shapes and shifts into other type of cheating. That's just how it is. And so Jesus says, I've got to come and I've got to kill this at its root. I'll give you an example of good things. Technology solved a lot of problems in the world, right? It has. About 10 years ago, we had some problems, and it was hard to connect and to connect with people and to connect in certain ways. And so we have the cell phone. In many ways, the cell phone is awesome. Many of you, our family was huddled around on Black Friday, and it was fun to watch them, and they were so excited. And it was kind of in a weird way that the cell phone kind of brought them together, and they were laughing and joking and buying things. And that's only $100. Boom. That's only $1,000. Boom. And we all went into debt together around Thanksgiving. It was awesome. So that's one little technology thing. We can actually connect, and you don't have to go to this Black Friday thing and risk your life going to Walmart on Black Friday. You can actually do it from your phone. But the cell phone also disconnects us, doesn't it? Speaking of Thanksgiving, I bet you some families were in the same room Thanksgiving on their cell phones. It also disconnects us. Same room where we used to laugh and talk and just joke and laugh. Sometimes you'll see families in the same house, in the same room. I don't know if you've ever done this, but have you ever texted a family member across the house? You don't have to raise your hand. Have you ever gotten in an argument with a family member in the same house on a cell phone across the house? Have you ever done that? None of you. Okay, great. I feel terrible. Let's pray. Let's go home. Okay, I've done that. Like, you're just texting, and it's like, what are you doing? Cell phones can also be an evil thing, but it can be a great thing. Second thing that this does, Jesus comes, it gets to the root of the matter, but it also does something that we see in 4 relational names in this passage. For unto us a child is born, it says. To us a son is given. Let's put it on the screen. And the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. This first one we just look at today, that's all we're going to do. Look at this Wonderful Counselor. Pele Yawetz is Hebrew. Pele Yawetz. Say that with me. Pele Yawetz. Let's go ahead and there we go. Pele Yawetz. Pele means beyond understanding. Yawetz means counselor, and it means one who advises or instructs or guides. Now, don't forget this, from a position of authority. That's what that word means. It's not a counselor that you pay $100 to and just say, give me your opinion, I'll take it or leave it, and many times we leave it. It's not that kind of counselor. It's not the kind of counselor that you call up a best friend in the middle of the night and say, I can't believe she did this, I can't believe she did this, and then your friend who's the counselor says, I can't believe she did it too, I hate her, you hate her, and then you hang up and everything. That's not the counselor either. God is not the kind of counselor that gives you his opinion and then lets you just move forward. That's very important with this. God is not going to counsel you from a position of advice. Does that make sense? And sometimes we approach God and his word and even church as a position of advice. God speaks to us in a position of authority. So we sing Wonderful Counselor, and it's beautiful, and that song was incredible, by the way, and I hope we sing it again. But Wonderful Counselor means counselor as it relates to advising and instructing from a position of authority. Pele Yawetz. Every week we're going to learn a little bit of that Hebrew. So I want you to turn to the person and say, Pele Yawetz. Go ahead. Now the other person, go ahead and turn to the person and say, I didn't know you knew Hebrew. I didn't know that. Go ahead. Go ahead. I didn't know you knew Hebrew. There you go. Good. Learn a little new language there. Now it's important that we know that he can counsel, but it's also very important to know this. He can counsel because he has gone through everything you've gone through. It's one thing to have a counselor. It's another thing to have a counselor that's been where you've been. If you have gone through a divorce, it's different when you're speaking to somebody that's been divorced, right? For those of you that have lost a child, it's different when you're speaking to somebody else that's lost a child, right? If your parent is going through dementia, it's another thing to know, and you talk to somebody and they say, I know how you feel. I've seen my mom or dad in that situation too, and you have that connection with it. When you have this counselor, this is what God does. God doesn't do it from afar. He says, I send myself to earth, God in the flesh, and I come and I'm going to go through everything that you go through so that when you come to me and pray, I can say, I've been there. Not only have I been there, but when you went through it, he was there with you. So your deepest, darkest times, guess what? You had somebody there with you. It's a counselor because he knows that. You say, some of you might kind of shiver at that and think that's just terrible that he was there. No. That shows his love. That same one that was with you and is with you is the same one that says, we're going to get through this today. We're going to make it through this. Hebrews 4 says this, for we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. We have a high priest who sympathizes with us. When you walk through this Christmas story, one of the things you're going to see is that Jesus was born into poverty. Tim Keller gives some great insights on this, and he talks about how Jesus was born into poverty, and he gives some incredible dynamics of this. And one, he was born in a stable. That shows he's impoverished. He shows that the reality that Joseph lacked money to secure proper lodging for his pregnant wife. Just think about that. You're wanting proper lodging, and you have a pregnant wife, and you can't find room for her to have a baby. Rich people don't have that problem. Poor people do. Back then, it shows that he was born into poverty. Literally, God himself chose to be born into poverty amongst smell of cows and animals. And those of you that lived in certain areas of the country where you have smelled cows, that's the smell. You know? Back in the day, you'd drive by Chandler, and Chandler just smelled like that. Like when you heard of somebody living in Chandler, which my parents did, and I'm like, oh my goodness, Chandler really, really stinks. Sorry for those of you that are from the East Valley, but it did, didn't it? It had that smell because there were cows there, and that's how Jesus, he was born into that. The manger did not smell of cinnamon and Hobby Lobby. It didn't. It smelled of cows. Here's another thing. When Jesus was dedicated at the temple, his parents presented a pigeon as a sacrifice instead of a lamb. Think about that. When he was dedicated to fulfill the law, which, by the way, Jesus put into place, God put into place, they didn't have the animal properly to be able to sacrifice it. So we have this pigeon instead of a lamb. At his birth, Jesus was laid down this pattern of this. He was born in a manger, and he would die on a cross. At his birth, the innkeeper said, no room. At his death, the crowd yelled, give us Barabbas. At his birth, he was wrapped in rags, and at his death, he was stripped naked of that which he wore. At his birth, he was ignored by the world, and in his death, he was rejected by his Father. Isaiah said this, surely he had borne our griefs and our sorrows, yet we esteemed him smitten by God and afflicted, but he was wounded for our transgressions. So when we come to Jesus, I don't come to him in poverty and judgment because Jesus already took my poverty and my judgment. We don't get some brownie points for living in poverty or taking on judgment on ourselves. Jesus took that upon himself for us. Does that make sense? So he was impoverished. He was bruised. He took all of our sins. And get this, if we lack wisdom, we are to go to him. James, which we just went through, James 1:5 says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without fault, without reproach, and it will be given to him. My favorite part of this verse is without reproach, without fault. You see, when I go to God and I ask for things, sometimes I back away in my prayer. This is just me. Sometimes I back away in my prayer because I realize I'm coming to him again, and I'm coming to him for wisdom because I blew it and I did something wrong. Have you ever done that? You come to God to try to get out of something, and you come to him and you're in fault. And he says, no. I'm going to give this to you, and I'm not going to bring reproach upon you. I'm not going to accuse you and say that you are at fault. I took that upon himself, so I can come boldly to Jesus, and I can ask him. If I need wisdom and I move forward, I can do that because of Jesus. So when your marriage is messed up, you can come to Jesus, and he says, you know what? I know how that feels to have broken family. I've seen it on the earth. I've seen things like that. We don't have to shrink back. When things are messed up at work, we can come to God. He gives you wisdom for that. We go back to this Hebrews verse, and all of this pain, all this suffering, all this stuff, it says that he took it upon himself. He was acquainted with that. We have a high priest who understands. What I love about this name, Wonderful Counselor, it means that Jesus came also for people with problems. They ask you, do you have a problem today that you're dealing with? Anybody? You got a problem today? Only two of us. I'll just close. Okay. 3 of you. If you have a problem today, listen to this. The only time I see miracles from Jesus in the Bible is a response to a problem. About that. He didn't just come and say, I'm going to do some tricks for you to prove that I'm God. No, it was always a response to a problem. So if you have a problem, you are in a good place for God to do a miracle. I want you to think about that. You don't have to say the problem out loud, but I want you to think about that problem, and I want you to take that to God today, because God says that's a really good place for you to be, because that's a really good place for me to perform a miracle in your life. Now, if you don't have a problem, I just want to tell you this. You probably do. You're not being honest with God about it. And that's a matter of prayer too. If you come to God and say, I think everything's just fine. There's always something in our lives or around us that we can bring to God. And I want to encourage you, maybe this next year needs to be a year for miracles to happen in your life. And for miracles to happen in your life, you better be actively engaged in talking to this wonderful counselor, asking God to perform miracles where you see problems in your life. Does that make sense? Wouldn't that be awesome if you look back on 2023 and say, wow, that was a year of miracles because I spent time with God and I asked God to show up, and he showed up. And it was tough though. It was tough though, because I want to tell you this. There are some things that how we must approach the wonderful counselor. And I'm going to end with this. 3 things. We must completely be honest with him. If you want for God to show up, you're going to have to be honest with God. Every counselor is going to tell you, there's no need to walk into my office and lie to me. There's no need to come to God and not be honest with him. And when you're honest with God, this is what you need to do. You need to say this: God, I come to you and I honestly give this to you right now, today. I give this to you. I give you this problem. I'm going to be honest about speaking to you about what this problem is. All right? Now, what God will do is he will bring change in your life based upon the honesty that you have before him. If you don't come before God, God can't change your life. If you're honest about him, he can fix you. He can help you. Some people, you're struggling with drugs. You're struggling with porn. Some of you are struggling with adrenaline rush. Adrenaline rush that maybe when you're with somebody and you're at work and you're working hard and that person gives you kudos and says, wow, you're an incredible worker and you did this and you did that. And sometimes that adrenaline rush will cause you to feel like, you know what, I'm just going to keep doing this. I'm getting these kudos, and you just keep going and you keep going and keep going. That's an addiction. You need to bring that to God. You need to be honest with God and say, God, I am really interested in pleasing other people than you. And watch God show up. I've seen a lot of men, I've seen a lot of women get so wrapped up in the world and going, that they really forget the fact that it's really about God and pleasing Him and not other people. Secondly, you come before God, you want to be healed. You come before God and you want to be healed. Not only do you need to be honest with Him, but you need to come before Him and you need to want to be healed. We want a God sometimes to just clean us up so we can move forward and live the same life over and over again. We must come before God and we must want to be healed. Some people do not want to give up that one sin. You don't want to give up that one hang up. You don't want to give up that one thing, because if you give up that one thing, it'll change the trajectory of your life, and you've kind of have grown used to that one thing that you like. But you got to come to Him and you say, you know what, I want to be healed. Augustine said this, God, make me pure, just not yet. What he's saying is, well, yes, God, I'm all for this. I love this. I love this. I love Advent. I love coming before you. But you know what? I want to be pure, but not yet. Not that thing. Not that one thing. Not that hang up that I have. I like that. Say, be specific. It could be as simple as, God, I want to trust you, but you've called me to move my family here, to follow you. But I can't do that because of all these other things. No. If God said it, you go. Or maybe you got your mind on moving and God says, stay. You've got it all worked out. You've got your future planned out. You've got the job picked out. And God says, I never called you to do that. You see, God isn't a wonderful counselor if you're going to put stipulations upon Him. We want to be healed. Healing means I follow you and I obey you. Remember King Ahaz, he says, I want that promise, but I don't really like the obedience part of it. You can't have this counselor, this wonderful counselor, and all that brings, if you're not willing to obey. You see, these three questions are invitations. Each one of us, as we leave here today, you're going to have to answer these questions. If you really want a counselor, if you really want His answer in your life, His provision in your life, you got to come honestly to Him, and you got to want to be healed. You got to do whatever He says. As you read the Gospels, one of the things that stands out is that Jesus asked people to do peculiar, strange things. John 9:6, healing a blind man. Jesus spits on the ground, makes mud pies, puts it on the blind man's eyes, tells him to go wash it off at a specific pool across town. That's weird. When you read it, I've had people come to me and say, that looks weird, like whispering, like, don't tell God I said this, but that's weird. Yeah, it's weird. Peter comes up to him and has a need, and Jesus says this, why don't you go, I want you to catch a fish, you go in the fish, and you're going to go in there, there's going to be a gold coin that's going to take care of your need. That's peculiar. Why didn't you just take the money out? You got a need, Peter? Here you go. You got a blind man? Why don't you just heal him? He does it because God will ask us to do peculiar things to make sure that it's about obedience. It's about you obeying Him no matter what. He's asked me to do peculiar things, and I've done it, and on the other side of it, I've had the Holy Spirit's power, and I've seen provision in my life, and it is all about God. God has you in a place heading into this year where if God is going to work in your life, you're going to have to be willing to say yes to Him even before He gives you the answer. Remember blank checks? You used to give blank checks to people. Get this. Those of you that are under 25, people that you knew really well, you'd give them a blank check and say, here you go, fill in whatever that cost is, fill it in. They could have cleaned you out of everything. But you did a blank check and you gave it to them and you said, you just fill it in. If it's $1,000, great. Hey, if it's over a couple thousand, let me know, so you don't clean me out. But they could have done anything. They could have cleaned out the bank account. You're just saying, here you go, take it, fill it in. This is what we do with God when we give our lives to Him. We say, blank check. Whatever you ask, I'll do. Wherever you lead, I'll go. And here's what the wonderful counselor meets you at that need. In James, it says this, James 1. God gives who gives generously to all without reproach, it will be given him. But let him ask in faith with no doubting. For the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. For that person must not suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. So if you aren't saying yes to God and not worrying about the answer, then he will not act upon that. You've got to act, and you've got to ask, and you've got to say, you know what, God? I give you a blank check. The yes is on the table, whatever you say. So you come to him with your addiction. You come with him with your hurts. You come with him with your pains. You come with your problems in marriage. You come with him with your problems in work. You come with him and you say, God, whatever you tell me to do, I will do it. I want to be healed. I know you can do it. And whatever you say, God, I'll do it. Is there anybody here that would sign up for that? Anybody? Is that what you want to do? Because that's what this is about. Wonderful Counselor is not about just a song. It's not just about Jesus coming. He came to give you life. He came to die on a cross for you, to give you his presence. And I end with this. When you think about Wonderful Counselor, it's not so much about the Wonderful Counselor if he does what he says he's going to do. The Wonderful Counselor is wonderful because he's wonderful. That's it. He may not take away your problems. He may not take away your circumstances. But there's something wonderful about him. In the midst of the circumstances and problems, you have God walking beside you in this season. And that's what's wonderful about Jesus. Jesus came to be with us. Jesus came to be with you. Not to just fix your issues, to get at the root problem, but most of all, to be with you. He came because he loves you. And he was born in this manger on a holy night. It was a holy night, set apart night. He came in a manger and he was born. Let me ask you this. Have you ever received the Wonderful Counselor in your life? Have you ever received him? If not, you can do that today. If you have received him, let me ask you this. Have you said yes to him? Have you said yes to him? Like blank check yes. All in yes. Like whatever you say, I will do. That's a Wonderful Counselor.